Hey, what's up? Thank you so much for purchasing the Modular Windows project. I'm Tyson France with Motion Revolver, and we'll dive right in here to show you how to customize it. Once you've opened up the After Effects project, in the project window, you'll see these folders here all listed in order, steps 1 through 7. So step 1 is where we import our assets. So anything that we're going to use with the project, whether it's video or images, our logos, our soundtrack, stuff like that, we're going to import it into this folder so that we know where to find it when we need it. Step 2, very straightforward. We open up this composition here to insert our soundtrack file. As you can see, I already have the soundtrack inserted and edited for the preview video that I created for this project. Step 3 is where we insert our logo and our main end tag. So the logo end tag is obviously the logo that we want to appear at the very end of the video, or it's the final scene, whether you want it to be an image or video, whatever the case may be. This is the composition in which you drop that into. And then the logo intro is the logo that appears at the beginning. Same thing, it's just it happens at the beginning of the animation instead of the end, just in case you want two different logos. Step 4 is where we customize the overall appearance. So if we twirl open that folder, we'll see that there's a comp inside called Global Appearance. If we open that up, what we have here is actually a previewable composition. So what you can do is actually do a preview render on this to kind of see just how the animation progresses. It's just basically an example of a scene within the project, just to give you an idea of what everything looks like once you actually customize the colors and stuff. So put the playhead here somewhere where we can see a few of the elements. That looks good. All right, so starting at the top here, all we have to do really is click through these swatches and customize the elements that are contained within the effects control window. So it's pretty important that you have your effects control panel open just to make editing this easier. Instead of diving into the layers in the timeline, gets a little messy twirling these things open and trying to find the attributes that you're trying to customize. So if you don't have your effects control windows open, yours might be located in a different part of your interface, but go to Window and then make sure the little checkbox is checked next to Effects Controls, and that way it'll allow you to click through and edit these pretty easily. So this top swatch here, top swatch is image tint color, and that image tint is the color that well, obviously the image is tinted when animating onto the screen. So if we go back here a little bit further, you can see this may be a little bit better. So if we change this matte black to attribute right here, if we click on that little color swatch, we change it to, make it a little obvious here. I'll make it like a neon green. As you can see, we change the color of our tint. And obviously that can be any color we want. We want red, we can make it red. The image edge color. It's kind of difficult to see here because the edge blends in with the background currently. So actually, why don't we just jump down here real quick to the background color. Now this is a gradient ramp, so you may want to update both colors in here. But this start color is the color that appears at the top of the background, and the end color is the color that appears at the bottom of the background. So if we change this top color, say to a dark gray, can make this even darker. I think we'll leave that actually maybe kind of like that. Trying to get a happy medium here so that we can see a bunch of our elements. All right, and then of course if we want the background just to be a solid color, you just make both colors the same. But I think that's where we'll leave it. So now we can see the image edge color a little bit better. So we'll go back up here to this second swatch, and if we don't want this image leading edge to be white, and let's say we want it to be yellow. There we go. Now we have our leading edge is yellow. Let's go with a little bit more appealing color palette. We'll make that blue. And then we'll actually jump down here to our little plus sign. Since those are blue, we might actually make those red. Now, those are called the plus glyph controls. And then the little minus one, that dash symbol, that's supposed to represent these bars here. If I scroll out, see those a little bit better. So we can change the color of those little plus signs to maybe red. And now it matches our color palette a little bit more. And then the glyph control can make those blue as well. We can also adjust the opacity of these two glyphs by clicking on the swatches. There's an opacity slider here. Now, technically you can scroll this past 100, but it will only be active between 0 and 100. So if we set this at, say, 20, our little plus glyphs will only be set to an opacity of 20%. The default's 90. Same thing with the little dash lines. The default's 90. If we want the opacity to be lower, we can lower that down to whatever we want. Or if you want it at full opacity, you just make that 100, and there you go. But I like a little bit of opacity, I should say a little bit of transparency so that it's slightly see-through. But we're coming up with a pretty cool color palette here. Here we also have, we can change our text color. So if we wanted our text to, say, be red as well, we could do that. We'll just make sure this matches by using our little eyedrop tool there. All right, and then the text panel is obviously the panels in which the text sits, so we'll scroll all the way out so that we can see the whole thing. And if we want the panel maybe instead of black to be white, now we have a completely different look. And I think, oh, there's one more here, the horizon controls. Oh, actually, there's another that we'll come back to this image contrast and blur, but let's concentrate on the horizon controls, which is your line back here that sort of gives the project a little bit of depth instead of, you know, not having anything in the background. This sort of makes it feel like the images are living inside of some sort of environment. So we can change the color of the horizon, just like we did with all of the others. As you can see now, it's a weird purple color, so I'm just going to leave that black. And then our horizon opacity is currently set to 20%. So if we wanted that to be much darker, as you can see, we can set that up to 100%, so we can see it a lot better. The horizon fall off is going to stretch the horizon down further. So if we bump this up, you'll see the horizon gets longer and longer. So if you want the floor to be a little bit more prominent, you can either set that lower or higher, depending on your preference. I believe the default was 120. And then the horizon blur, that's the line where the floor actually fades off into the background. So the reason this is currently set to 4 is because technically if this background was so far away from the camera, it would be a little bit blurry. You wouldn't have a completely clean line like that. If you're looking for a little bit of depth, it might look a little bit weird if the background isn't blurred. So that's currently set to 4. If you want it to be much blurrier, we can set it to 20, and there you go. You have a much blurrier looking background, which is actually kind of cool. I think I'm going to go with that. I'm going to set this opacity back down to maybe like 65, though. Yeah, that looks good. All right. So the last thing in here to customize is the image contrast and blur controls. This is where this mostly controls the look of the image that is contained within the tinted portion as it's animating onto the screen. So both of these sliders are currently set to 12. Let's just bump them up to kind of show you. Not getting a lot of result there. But if you wanted the contrast and the blur to be more or less prominent inside of the tinted portion of this image, these are the controls that you would play with. All right, so I think that covers everything. I don't believe I missed anything. Just going through here real quick one more time, make sure that I didn't miss anything. But no, I think we're good. So this is going to be our new look. I might actually change these dash glitches to white. Yeah. Let's see. Now I'll leave them blue. Now I'm going to leave these blue just so that they show up a little bit better in the preview so you can see them. All right, so now that we've customized our global appearance, move on to step 5. And this is where we insert our media. So whether it's images or videos or graphics, anything that we want to display within the modules, this is where we're going to insert them. There is currently 20 modules. Now that doesn't mean that you can't edit. So when you open this up, I currently have video imported here, but when you open these up, this is what you'll see. These are guide layers, so they won't actually show up in the main comp. These are just each individual comp to let you know what module you're working inside of. But we have some video imported into here, and then we can also make edits within each of these compositions. Each module comp is 30 seconds long. So if we wanted to extend the duration of each composition within the main comp, which we'll get to in a second, we can make edits in here if we wish. But for right now, we just have a single source of video inserted. Each of these modules is the exact same. As I said, there are a total of 20 of them. If you need more than 20 modules, I actually recommend the easiest thing to do is to actually duplicate the entire project and import them as one large one. I'll show you how to do that at the end of this tutorial to kind of show you how to make a longer project instead of actually duplicating these and then having to replace the compositions. It can get a little bit cumbersome. If you're comfortable with After Effects and you know how to duplicate comps and replace layers with inside very easily, then you could also just duplicate these comps to infinity, however many you needed, and then edit the modules that are inside of the modules folder. Like I said, if you're well versed with After Effects, you probably can figure it out relatively easily because this is set up in a very organized fashion. So that's always an option if you wish to dive into that. But moving on to step 6 is where we insert our text. Now, as you can see, we have 12 media modules and we have 12 text modules. So each one of these text modules corresponds exactly to the media module. So module 1 text is going to appear along with module 1. So now if we open up module 1 text, I'll actually show you one that was not already edited. Let's see. Okay. So remember, we changed the color of our text and our background. So now we have red text and a white background. But when you open this up, it'll be a black background with white text. But as a default, there are 2 lines of text. You don't have to use both, and you can also duplicate them to make more. So each of these text layers is editable. So we're obviously in module 12 text right now. So we can just double click on this with the text tool and my new text layer. So as you can see now, my boxes aren't really matching very well with my new text. So all we have to do here is go to panel 1 and panel 2 and hit the S key to show the scale attribute. And under the My New Text, under Panel, we just need to scale down the width of that panel to kind of encapsulate the text a little bit better. Same thing down here with Panel 2. We just scale the width a little bit better to encapsulate it. You can also do the same with the height if you want it to, be a little bit closer to the text. You can do that as well. But we can also click and grab each of these. Whoops. We can also click and grab. I don't know how I grabbed that tool. Anyway, edit, redo, change value. Okay. We can also move this text around. So if we click and grab the text, the panel layer underneath will follow. So we can have these separated like this, or we can have them overlapping a little bit. If we needed to widen this comp, like say we wanted our text to be a little bit further apart in our main comp, we can widen the comp and display them like that. But if we scrub through here, we can see they animate on. If you only needed one text layer, like we had up here in Module 1, I turned off the bottom two layers. So now I only have the introducing text, which is a custom title. So, you know, we can turn those off. We can also duplicate these. If we highlight a green layer and a red layer and hit the D key, Command D key on the keyboard within the timeline, and then click and drag both of those layers underneath, and then maybe offset those another 15 frames in time, and then what we'll also have to do is click that text layer. Whoop. There we go, third text layer. So really, you can duplicate this as many times as you wish. I'm going to delete that. Another thing worth mentioning, this is Helvetica, just standard Helvetica TT. So this can be any font you wish. I didn't include any download links because this is one of those projects where you either have Helvetica installed on your computer or you don't. Most people don't like to pay for fonts, so I did not include a link to a premium Helvetica font because that's readily available. You can find links to those on the internet. So if you don't have Helvetica and you want to use Helvetica, chances are, unfortunately, you will need to purchase it. So anyway, that's basically the text. It's the same exact thing for every one of these modules. So moving on to step 7, which is where the main animation occurs, we just go ahead and open up the Modular Windows Build composition. And I'm actually going to set this to quarter so that it renders a little bit faster. So right off the bat, just scroll through here and show you this is where the beginning is. Now this logo isn't included in the project, obviously, so you likely won't see that unless you already imported a logo into your project. But we zoom through the logo to our first comp, or our first scene, I should say. Before I get too far, just quickly, if you need to speed up the rendering, the best way to do that is to turn off depth of field on the camera layer. So if you twirl open camera and then go to camera options and toggle off depth of field, you won't get the cool blurriness from the depth. Let's see if I can find a good sample scene where that's apparent. Let's see. Here's a good one. All right, so as you can see, there's really no depth of field here because all of these layers are perfectly in focus, which is cool in its own right. But if you're looking for a more realistic depth, turning the camera depth of field back on, now you can see these layers are actually blurred while the foreground is in focus. So this is a little bit more of a render intensive setting, but in the end it produces a much better looking result in my opinion. So obviously it's completely up to you, but if you want to speed up the rendering, just toggle that little depth of field attribute off and it will significantly reduce the render times. So okay, back to the overall structure of this Modular Windows build comp. I'm going to hit the tilde key on the timeline to kind of show you the layers that are in here. So each one of these clusters of layers is a scene. So as you can see, we have our module intro, which is the logo that we inserted. And then we animate to module 1, which is obviously our module 1 text, module 1 images or video, whatever we imported. And then it goes module 2, module 3, module 4, module 5, and so on. Now, each one of these green layers denotes a control layer for that module. So if, for example, I didn't like how close this module was to the camera and I wanted to move it back in Z-space, I would highlight this green control layer and I would hover over the little axis point here so that the Z highlights, as you can see there in the comp window, and I would just drag to the left, which pushes this back further into the scene. We can also move this side to side, or we can move it forward. We can also reposition where the text layer sits. Each one of these blue layers denotes a text layer, so we can move these around. Now, obviously, if you don't want any text to appear in this scene, you would just turn that layer off, and that goes for any one of these layer clusters. All right, so each of these is basically set up the same way. Each module has a text layer and its image layers and a control layer, so you can customize these things as you see fit. The main control occurs on this master control layer right here. So if I highlight that and hit the U key to show the keyframes, you'll see that there are essentially brackets of keyframes. All right, so and they are ease in and ease out keyframes, so you can kind of see where the movement, the main movements occur. So if you treat each one of these groups of brackets as its own animation, we go from scene 1 to scene 2, and then it slowly drifts. And now the drifting does not occur on this master control layer. It occurs on the control layer for each layer set. So if we highlight the green layer and hit the U key, we can see that the anchor point is actually slightly animated, so that it sort of slowly drifts as it's sitting on the screen, so that it's not completely static. So we can edit the anchor point positions if we want to kind of customize how that drifting animation looks. But an important thing to remember is to treat each one of these little sets of keyframes as brackets, and the little brackets are the denotation between scene animations, so where we slide from scene to scene. So say, for example, you wanted, let's say you wanted scene 1 to stay on the screen a little bit longer. So right now, it begins to animate off right at 5.5 seconds. So what we would have to do is we would have to make sure that we select all of these keyframes so that everything stays in line. And let's say we wanted it to animate off the screen at 10 seconds. We'd slide all those keyframes down. All right. And then what we would have to do is extend these layers so that it stays on the screen. So now all these layers stay on the screen longer, but now you're going to have to move all of these layers. So you're going to have to highlight all of these layers above it and move it down to about where that new position is. I believe I had it set, the incoming layer is happening at 15 frames past where the animation began. Yeah, so as the animation begins to slide, we see the next scene come on to the screen. So that's how we can play with the duration of each of these layer sets. All right, and each one of these works the exact same way. As you can see, there's different colors. So the dark purple denotes a set that has 3 sets to it. Now, each of these modules is kind of like split up into 3 slices, as you can see. So I'll pick one that's a little bit better to see here. How about this one? Okay, so we'll just go back to this one since it's the easiest to see. So we can also play with the position of each of these slices. So if we wanted these to be offset, we could do something like that. We can move them around in Z space if we wanted this to be set back further. You know, we can do any sort of repositioning of these layers that we want. The light purple denotes a 2-slice image. So there's 2 slices. And a pink layer denotes a 1-slice image. So as you can see up here, and this only occurs once in the animation. But as you can see, there's also one other element here. At the bottom of each one of these layer sets is a shadow. If you don't like the shadow and you want the shadow to go away, you can just turn those layers off. Or you can also keep them on and play with the opacity. Some of them already have opacity animated, so you may have to keep that in mind, but there is a way to turn the shadow off if you don't like the look of the shadow. All right. And then really the rest of this is, as I explained, it's all the exact same. The very final scene is the logo that we dropped in at the very beginning. And that's the bulk of the animation. I don't actually think there's anything else in here to really cover because it's all iterative. It all basically, you know, if you customize one element, it's the same process for the others. If I untoggle the hide shy layers and scroll back down here, you can see this is where all of those little glyphs live. So the orange layers are the lines, and the yellow layers are the little pluses. So that's where those live. So say, for example, you have one in your way, like you're working on this scene, and say, like, I don't know, for some reason, there's a plus, like, right in your way. Let's move this around just so you can see what I'm talking about. Like, let's say you have this little plus in your way, and you don't like the way that this plus is, like, right in view of the image. You can unhide those shy layers and then navigate down. You can usually click right on it in the window, and you can move it, or you can turn that layer off, or whatever the case may be. You can move those layers, turn them off, deactivate them, activate them, whatever the case may be for your particular instance. All right. So moving on to the final composition that is in the project. This is the master comp, which has a few adjustment layers applied, and also has a channel split attribute. Now, there's also going to be another layer in here. I believe I called it no channel split, but there will be a layer in here, and I believe it's yellow in the main comp. When you open this up, so if you don't like the look of this split channel, where you can kind of see the color around the edges and stuff like that, you can turn all of these layers off and turn this no channel split layer on. And as you can see, the edges are a little bit crisper. They don't have the blurry, colorful edges. So that's always an option as well. The adjust layer has a CC lens applied to kind of give everything a little bit of a curved look. So as you can see, if I turn that off, we lose the curved edges. This kind of mimics the look of a lens, so, you know, to make it look like it was filmed with a camera a little bit more. And then there's also the add grain, which just gives it a little bit more of a final film look. This adds a little bit to render time as well, so you can turn this add grain effect off to reduce render times. But other than that, this is where the soundtrack layer lives as well. So you usually want to render from this master composition once everything's compiled. That way, all the layers will be contained, and you'll have a final full presentation. But I think that pretty much covers it. I don't think I missed anything. But as usual, if you have any comments or questions or concerns, you can always reach me through our Video Hive profile page or at motionrevolver.com. Once again, thank you so much for purchasing the project, and good luck with your project. So if you believe that you're going to require more than 20 individual placeholders for your project, I recommend that you actually create multiple projects and import them into one. So if you're working with After Effects Creative Cloud, for example, you would want to let's create we'll rename this to 01, and then we'll duplicate it by hitting Command D on the keyboard and then changing this to 02. So now, and we can do this as many times as we need. So if we need, so this would now cover 40 placeholders, a third project would cover 60 placeholders, a fourth project would cover 80 placeholders, so on and so forth. So now what we have is, now that we, so that we have two, let me start over. Now that we have two After Effects projects, we can now cover 40 placeholders without a problem. But we have to import them both into a single project so that we can easily edit them. Or what we could do is we can edit these projects individually, work with placeholders 1 through 20 in this project, and then work with placeholders 21 through 40 in this project. And then once both of these projects are finished, we could then import it into a new project, which I have here. I just have a blank After Effects project open. We hit Command I, and we navigate to our project folder. And then we just highlight both projects and hit Open. And After Effects will import each of those individual AE projects into one single project. So now we have a duplicate of each. And while this seems cumbersome, it can be a lot easier than duplicating comps and replacing layers and stuff like that. We can also duplicate the entire thing within this project. So if we realize that now we need more than 40 placeholders, we can duplicate this again by hitting Command D. And now we have a third version, which we can just rename. We can actually get rid of the .aep at the end here just to make things a little bit cleaner. But now you can see now we have 3 iterations of this exact same project contained within one After Effects project, which will allow us to then we can then maybe create another like overall master composition. Let's say it's 3 minutes long. And we can import and edit together each of these master comps into one comp. And now we've strung together a much longer presentation based on the duplicated After Effects projects. So that is probably the simplest and most straightforward way to get more than the allotted 20 placeholders per project. So I hope that helps. If you run into any problems or have any questions as to how this process works, as always, please feel free to contact me. And thanks again for watching, and good luck with your project.
Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.